To remind you, my name is Najee Nunes. I am the co-chair of the Commonwealth Youth Forum International Task Force, and I am the outgoing vice chairperson for policy and advocacy on the Commonwealth Youth Council. And I must say, we had incredible energy yesterday. Can someone remind me what the two plenaries that we did were on yesterday, those two key subjects? I may have a gift for that person. So we did the opening plenary, which was about... Okay, youth leadership, and then we moved on to the second plenary, which was on... Guys, you have the program. It was on democratic institutions, and then we moved from that to the third substantive plenary, which was about... Sustainability, yes, it was about the environment. Okay, so I'm going to invite my co-moderator, Kevin, now, and we'll come and we'll start with a short prayer, and then we'll get into the rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Najee. Talofa, everyone, once again. May I call upon Tupe Roberts, of one of our Samoan youth delegates, to come up onto the stage and quickly lead us with a prayer, and then we'll get on with the business for today. Tupe?
Please bow your head. We're heading for our morning prayer this morning. Our dear Heavenly Father, we are so happy and glad we are here together safe. Please, we are humbly ask you to place all of us here place us in many ideas and thoughts. And bless all the people we are here together in our beautiful nation of Samoa. Please forgive us from our sins in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you very much, Tupe. Can we give a round of applause for our delegate that has blessed us with the prayer for this morning to officially open day 2 of our program. Oh, okay. Thank you, Najee. Just to reintroduce myself, I was here yesterday. My name is Kevin Schuster, and I am the co-chair for the Commonwealth Youth Task Force. I share this role with Najee since the beginning of this year, and I'm also the current chair for the Samoa National Youth Council. It's a privilege for myself to be here today, co-hosting with Najee here to run the program and also be your host for the last day of our CYF 2024.
Absolutely, and I can't believe that we're at the second and final day, because I think we can all agree that after such an insightful start, that we're eager to start today's sessions. But before we dive into the specifics, I think it's important that we take a moment to reflect on the key discussions that we had yesterday. So we talked about leveraging youth leadership to strengthen democracies, and we spoke about ensuring our participation in governance and the urgency of addressing climate change head on. And today, it's all about how we can strengthen our economies and our societies for long-term resilience.
Yes, thank you for that. And we'll also be looking at how entrepreneurship, skills development, and digital innovation can transform the Commonwealth, particularly in the face of current challenges. But before we dive in, just a quick reminder that safeguarding is at the core of everything that we do here. Respect, inclusivity, and cultural understanding are non-negotiables in our conversation. As always, if anyone has any concerns, please reach out to our safeguarding officer, Samson, whom we introduced yesterday, who is here to ensure that we all feel safe and respected.
Absolutely. And before we begin our plenary sessions, I think it's also important to recognize that today is an opportunity for us to connect with each other, to engage, to build those cross-Commonwealth stories and friendships that are so important. And so we encourage each of you to participate fully and to share your ideas throughout the rest of today.
And now for something fun, since we're all in this together, how about we take a moment to connect with the people next to you? Please turn around and, say talofa, to the person that is next to you. Yeah. Oh, I'm loving it. I'm loving the energy. I think you're overdoing it, but please keep at that pace all throughout the day. Yeah. Share what you're most excited about for today. I know it's the last day, and then we've got the outreach coming up, and also a lot of side events that were carefully crafted by the ComSec, as well as the Commonwealth Youth Task Force, together with the support of the ministry and all our partners. We'll give you a minute or two before we jump into our first session. Let's hear some buzz in the room. Yeah, so have a little bit of a chit-chat for like a minute. We'll time it right now. Thank you for that. I know following on from yesterday, I'm assured by Najee that he was very, very excited about how we do things here in Samoa, that when there is a gap, we can gladly fill it in by doing the milli, milli, milli. I know Petronella was doing this yesterday. Shall we do that again today? Let's go. Milli, 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 milli. And for those of you that are just joining us today, yeah, you're supposed to be rubbing, yeah. Milli, 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 patia, patia. I'm loving it, yeah. Okay, we'll go to Najee.
Perfect. So now that we're all energized, it's time to kick things off with our first session of the day, which is going to be our spotlight session for the Asia region. So at this moment in time, I'm really honored, so humbled, so pleased to invite to us now Professor Padrati Trivedi. He is from the Commonwealth Secretary General's office, and he is our special envoy for SDG implementation. Please make him feel welcome as he makes his way up to us now.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. What energy. Now I have to match that. But I'll be brief. I've been just given 5 minutes to summarize the key message. Well, the key message is the world right now, and I hope others have told you, is divided into two groups. There is no digital divide. There is no youth divide. There is no debt divide. There is an implementation divide. And I am a lifelong professor. I mean, this is my 50th year teaching. So it's a long time. And I can assure you it's not the knowledge, it's not the ideas that is stopping us from achieving the objective. It's the implementation. You know, I've attended hundreds of conferences. You have attended. But ultimately, who implements? And we repeat the same ideas as if we have just discovered. And we get the satisfaction that we have listened to the ideas and knew. There's hardly ever a brand new idea, even if it is. So the world today, to get ideas, all you have to do is Google, or you use artificial intelligence, you'll get all ideas. Just say how to get this thing done. They'll tell you how to get it done. What is the best practice? They'll tell you the best practice. Everything is available. You don't have to get together. The key issue, in my view of looking at things, and this is why I'm here, is implementation, implementation, implementation. Now, you may ask, what is the problem? Now, obviously, implementation has to be done in any country by the government. It is not us. We can only give ideas, but ultimately it's the government. What is the problem? And that is really my lifelong devotion to solve that problem. So I'm going to just share briefly what that problem is. The problem with the government, and this is a challenge which the Secretary General of the Commonwealth gave us, because she has extensive experience in working in the government, and she said that any government department, you ask 5 people, what is the performance, how are they doing, you'll have 5 different views. From this point of view, it looks good. From this point of view, it doesn't look good. Good, bad, and ugly, you'll get all the views. This is the problem. Whereas in the private sector, when they announce a profit of $300 million, let's say, everybody agrees. You'll never find papers writing, no, it's not 300, it is 245, it is 150. There's no controversy. The stock market takes it at its face value, the investors take it at their face value, and life goes on. Why is there a difference between public and private sector in this manner? Then why don't we have a bottom line? We can say we have to develop youth, and after 1 year, you ask 5 people, some people will say, yeah, they did a good job. Some will say they did an excellent job. Some will say they didn't do what they were supposed to do. The reason is that we don't have a bottom line in the government. In private sector, there is a bottom line. Everybody works towards it, so there is no controversy. They have but you can't say that I have made a $300 million profit without any basis. You have to get it audited, so it has to be audited by an auditor. Not just that, before you make it public, you have to have an external auditor also audit it and say that this $300 million that you are claiming is indeed a fair reflection of what you have done. It's a fair reflection. That is really the system in the private sector. In government, it's absent. And for the first time at 11 o'clock, we will be presenting, we have created a bottom line, and all the 56 countries of the Commonwealth have agreed. So we have created now the counterpart of generally accepted accounting principles. We have created, for the government, we call them generally accepted performance principles. And I have this, which will be launched at 11 o'clock, and thank you. This is not my view. Yeah. And I'm here actually to share this exciting news. You should take interest, because if you want anything to be implemented, you really need to figure out whether they have the implementation capacity, they have the systems to implement it or not. I hate to say this in a room full of so many wonderful people, but the wisdom is, for any organization, 80% of its delivery and its effectiveness depends on the quality of systems, only 20 on people. So in government, what happens is mostly there are very good people but caught in bad system. And that is really what needs to be fixed. I will not take too much time. I just wanted to convey this message and invite you at 11 o'clock, where the Secretary General will be launching this generally accepted performance principle. And we will be talking with people as to where this thing, but this is the exciting thing. You can Google, start pushing this. I mean, with an idea, you must also tell the government how to implement it. And if we have an agreement on this thing, we will make much more progress than by simply giving them more ideas. That's my message for the day. I will just give in a few minutes. I thank you for your time and look forward to being in touch. You will have all the information at the desk about this and the session at 11 o'clock. I urge whoever can make it. We have plenty of seats. You will hear the Secretary General herself talk about it, because this is one of the key achievements of the Commonwealth in the last few years, that we've got the 56 governments of the Commonwealth to agree on how to measure the bottom line of the government. And now it's time for implementation. That idea is out there. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our first spotlight session that kick-started our program for today. Now, second up, we've got two spotlight sessions before we move into the our plenary session. So, calling Malachi of the Malachi Waga, representing the Commonwealth Organization for Social Work and particularly young persons, for their spotlight.
Nisam Bulvinaka, Talafalava, and greetings, all my fellow colleagues in the House. I'm glad to be part of the Commonwealth Organization for Social Work. But first of all, I must introduce myself. My name is Malakai Wanga Kaitani. I'm from the beautiful island of Fiji, and I'm representing the Commonwealth Organization for Social Work with my colleagues that are seated right here in the middle. And I also represent the Association of Fiji Social Workers, and I also teach at the University of the South Pacific with the social work program under the School of Law and Social Sciences. You might be wondering why I'm here today, and when I was seated there at the table, I was just looking at the theme, navigating our course and building a resilience for a common future. You know, we as social workers, we stand for social justice, human rights and equity. And as a young social worker, we can't reach our goals of equity, justice and rights without youth participation and leadership. This is why youth participation and leadership is really needed within the context of social work in the Pacific. We still know and we understand that social work is still an emerging profession in the Pacific, and we need to recognize this within our governments. Since I'm given only 2 to 3 minutes to speak, I might just get right on into the point of why I'm here. One of the pieces of work that the Commonwealth of Social Work has done is to develop a young carers charter to support young carers who look after someone in their family who has an illness or disability or other conditions. First of all, I just want to take this time to acknowledge Andre Frank, who's here with us today. Andre, thank you so much for just want to acknowledge the work your late wife has done in developing the charter and in advancing the charter. Just to give you a brief definition of who is a young carer. Who is a young carer? So I know within the context of the Pacific, this is also familiar within, Commonwealth territories. A young carer are people of school age caring for elders, sick parents, mentally ill persons, and, those who are marginalized. Okay, I'm just going to re-explain the definition of who is a young carer. Young carers are a young people of school age caring for elders, sick parents, mentally ill people, and those who are marginalized in our communities. I just want to ask you one question. Just put your hands up if you've cared for someone who is in this category. Say, for instance, someone who's mentally ill, someone who has a sick parent, and you're caring for them at home in our local communities. Just put your hands up if you've done that. There's so many of us in the room. And even I just want to share my experiences. Growing up in my local village back at home, I've always been caring for my sick parents and also one of my brother's father who's mentally ill. And I know this is a shared responsibilities within the household, but then again, you'll get to notice that the welfare and the well-being of young carers are kind of forgotten and marginalized in the process. Sometimes they are deprived of, learning opportunities. Sometimes we don't go to school because we just have to stay home and we care for the sick people at home. So this particular charter reflects the hopes and aspirations of thousands of young carers from across the Commonwealth territories. The charter, as I've already said, also recognizes the welfare of these young carers who are sometimes almost forgotten in a lot of the discourses. Yesterday, I know that we've been talking a bit around climate change, adaptation to climate change. There's so many talks around climate change, but I think the focus is the specificity and how we get to detail, how we get to involve the marginalized into decision-making processes. Young carers needs to be consulted because they know the needs and aspirations of what their families and how are they struggling in life. So the charter, as I've already said, it recognizes the welfare of these young carers who are sometimes often forgotten, silenced and deprived of opportunities, for instance, education and other important areas of development. So during the consultation with young carers, we've heard from carers who said, it's hard to try to find a balance in life, juggling everything we have to do, and we want schools to respect and understand the issues we have to deal with at home. So in summary, now young people are waiting to hear that their needs are recognized and that the Commonwealth is responding to their plea to be heard. We encourage you as young leaders to stand with young carers by endorsing this young charter. Thank you so very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Give it up for our spotlight speakers. Amazing. This is what youth action looks like as we are doing this. So next up, we're heading into our first substantive plenary session. And this plenary is going to be on navigating our course, youth-driven approaches to resilient economies. And so in this session, we're going to have a conversation. We know that all youth are at the heart of driving innovation across our Commonwealth in terms of economic transformation. And so today we are eager to hear from experts on how young people can continue to contribute to foster sustainable growth and development as well as resilience across our Commonwealth. So I'm going to hand it over to Kevin to introduce our star panelists.
Thank you for that, Najee. Yeah, so we are thankful and we're very, very appreciative that these experts have agreed and have accepted the special request to be part of our plenary forum, which is the first plenary discussion for today. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speakers. First up is Ambassador Amina Mohammed from the Commonwealth Secretariat, specifically the General Special Envoy for Sports, Enterprise and Development. He's an esteemed diplomat with vast experience in governance and development across the Commonwealth. Secondly is Ms. Jennifer. Could I kindly ask Ambassador Amina Mohammed to please make your way up to the stage? Yep. Next one, Jennifer Britton. She's the Deputy Program Manager, ICT for Development at CARICOM Secretariat, who has been instrumental in driving digital transformation and entrepreneurship across the Caribbean. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Jennifer Britton. Our third speaker is Honorable Bakari Baji. He's the Minister of Youth and Sports from Gambia, who has been championing youth-led initiatives for economic resilience. Please put your hands together for Honorable Bakari. Our fourth speaker is Honourable Lord Collins. He's UK Commonwealth Minister, a passionate advocate for youth inclusion and global development. Please put your hands together for Honourable Lord Collins. Our next speaker is Professor Robin Mason. Professor Robin Mason is the chair of the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission, whose work at ACU supports young people through education and innovation. Put your hands together, please, for Professor Robin Mason. Last but not the least is Khosrow CYF. He is grassroots studio representative, a youth entrepreneur in digital innovation and storytelling from the Pacific. A round of applause, please, to welcome our last speaker, Khosrow CYF.
Absolutely. And so because we have a sort of stellar and outstanding panel, we need someone of equal measure to moderate. And so it is my pleasure for us to introduce Mandisa, who is a youth leader with extensive experience in sustainable urbanization and governance from Eswatini. And she is a true force on the task force. So welcome, Mandisa. Please make her feel welcome. Absolutely. And we will hand over to her to moderate this key discussion, yet again, on navigating our course, youth-driven approaches to resilient economies through entrepreneurship, skills development, and digital innovation.
Hello, Talofa. Oh no, is this the youth forum? Talofa. That's more like it. It is with my great pleasure today to be a moderator for the fourth plenary. And today's session, we will be looking at resilience through economies and entrepreneurship. So I think this is something we can all relate with. The amount of youth graduating from universities do not match the amount of job creation. Therefore, young people are already ready to take up space. We are ready, we have the required skills, but however, we do not have the platforms where we can use our skills. We do not have the jobs. We are not seeing our nations able to create jobs at the high rate in which we are graduating as young people. This session will explore the critical role in youth with fostering resilient economies through entrepreneurship, skills development, as well as digital innovation. We'll also highlight how young people are driving economic transformation and creating new opportunities, fostering inclusive growth, particularly in the digital age. The main focus of the discussion will be on how youth-led innovations and initiatives can shape the future of work, enhance economic resilience, as well as overcome barriers to full participation in the economy. My esteemed panel, using their experience, their extensive experience, will assist us in gaining deeper understanding in the role of young people in driving economic resilience through entrepreneurship as well as innovation, and giving actionable insights for supporting youth in overcoming barriers for economic participation. So we'd like this session to be more of an interactive session, and because of that, I'll only ask one question to our panel. Thereafter, we will give the opportunity to you young people to ask them questions just to tap into their experience. I will start with Ms. Jennifer. One of the positive effects that came from COVID-19 in response to the pandemic is the speed and the adoption of digital technology, which we saw it increasing by several years. How can digital innovation, particularly in ICT, contribute to youth-led economic resilience? What initiatives can Commonwealth countries adopt to foster greater youth participation in the digital economy?
Now, morning everyone. Nice to be here. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I think the question is multi-layered, and I thank you for it because it is a good question to, I think, ruminate on. However, I'm going to start by saying that obviously, as we say, how can ICTs build youth resilience? I think the one-word answer would be a yes. But I think it is a multi-layered, multifaceted answer in the sense that I think we have to look at it perhaps from the side of the youth resilience as opposed to digital innovation. I am very comfortable with the fact that I think the technologies can do everything that we ask them to do. How we use them, and I heard your word of adoption in your introduction, and it piqued my interest in the sense that I think for the CARICOM community, Caribbean community, which I represent today, we made use of, I wouldn't like to say that we adopted, and that process is still going on. However, I think that in terms of building youth resilience, we have to look at the personal and contextual resilience. We have to look at what's happening at the community level, what's happening at the business level, and then hopefully use those technologies to really future-proof. And future-proof is as of today. The future is today in terms of moving youth, joining youth ICTs and making them resilient. Having said that, I just also want to say that the youth already are using the technologies in various ways. I think there's an opportunity area for us as government and private sector and civil society to really bridge that gap in terms of making sure that the use is, for want of a better word, contextual and strategic. That's my first pass at the answer. Thanks. Yeah. At the question, yeah. Your second part of it was, what can we do to...
Initiatives that we can adopt to foster greater participation in youth.
Okay, I think that, first of all, I didn't say, but the Caribbean community is a grouping of 15 member countries and 6 protectorates. Curacao just joined this year. So we are a 21 country grouping. And a number of things have been tried, as you know, at the youth level for the past, I think, 2 or 3 decades. We've been working on youth policies and developing those policies very well. The magic is now joining the youth policies with what we have for the digital environment. And we do have a very robust digital strategy, which was called the Regional Digital Development Strategy from 2014, still stands the test of time, and it was in fact the first digital development strategy probably in the world. That having been said, again, there are still now, as we find the same layers that I talked about, there is need to go back into these strategies and interrogate them. But at the very practical level, in the COVID pandemic session, we started something called the CARICOM Girls in ICT Partnership, which was supposed to pull women and girls into ICT careers, or at least bolster their chosen career with digital technologies. We also started a digital skills task force, which is actually presenting its recommendations on Thursday of this week to ministers. So there have been lots of things which we've tried to do to bridge the gap between the youth policies that are existing and the digital policies. There's still a lot of work to do, and we do have other initiatives that I can share a little later on, but those are the two ones which were really amplified at the regional level and used with the hope of really infusing the youth agenda into the things we want to do for digital development. I'll stop there for now and then go on.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I will move on to the Honorable Minister, Bakari. CYF is a reflection of how important. Please also just highlight on what success stories you have, as well as challenges, and how you were able to overcome them.
Thank you. And good morning. Good morning. Let it be like a youth forum, right? All right. First, let me say we're glad to join you here, the young people from the Commonwealth, and to everyone else, the ministers and everybody who is around. Bakari from the Gambia. Now, in terms of what we have in the country, we have quite a number of initiatives, some of them new, some have been there that we have to build on over the past years. But specifically, understanding that young people are the ones that are the drivers of the economy, are the ones that need to be supported to be able to ensure that they run their businesses, especially startup business, and be able to be successful. The government in 2021 launched initially what is called the Youth Enterprise Fund. And the Enterprise Fund specifically targets young people who have small businesses, not new ones, but those that are already existing, who needed support, but were not able to get either loan from the banks because of the financial institutions requirement, or couldn't just figure out how to go about it. So the Enterprise Fund launched in January 2021, and up to today have supported cash amounts of money to more than 1,500 young people across the country in terms of grants and loans. So some are giving as grants, others are giving in terms of loans. And it comes along with a lot of training that one of our institutions called NEDI, National Enterprise Development Initiatives, conducts for them across the country. And then once they qualify, they are given the grant, and then they are mentored for 6 months to be able to get the business running. And then eventually they can transition by using that loan to get a business, and eventually, getting the grant to get the business, and eventually get a loan if they qualify based on all the requirements. So this has changed the business ecosystem, especially among the youthful population who are interested in business, and they necessarily don't need the banks anymore to be able to get their business going. And that's one of it. The second part looks at agriculture and what we can do in the agricultural setup. So we have an initiative which is supported by the UNDP, United Nations Development Program, and it's called the Gambia Songhai Initiative, or call it the GSI. Now, GSI is modeled from Port Novo in Benin, wherein a project is there that looks at how do we support and encourage young people to get into the agricultural field. And we have been running this program year in, year out by having a lot of young people, mostly from the rural areas, who would be put in this camp. And it's they're trained, they're giving accommodation and feeding, and then they're trained for the initial 1 year without going. Of course, they have their break to go to their families, and then they're taught on quite a number of agricultural practices, mostly environmentally friendly agricultural practice. And once they graduate, then they are supported with some incentives, farming equipment, farming tools, to get back to their communities, and some of them have been doing so well in that area. And we've also launched the National Graduate Service Program. And the Graduate Service Program targets young people who are not business people, They are not farmers, but they have gone to university and they have graduated, finishing 4 years of education, but they are not able to find a job. And the government brings them on board, put them through a 1-year program on job placement, and after that they're able to get back and use the experience that they have gained in the 1 year to be able to get employed. So these are some of the initiatives that the government have rolled out in the recent years to be able to support young people to be economically empowered and to be able to take themselves out of poverty, support themselves, support their communities. And just about 2 weeks ago, we graduated our latest batch of the National Youth Service Program, which is similar to the National Youth Service Graduate Program, but it has been there for many years or many decades, and it targets those young people that don't have the opportunity to go to university but have completed grade 12, and they're also taken through an orientation, and the government pays for them to go for TVET training for 2 years. And so these are some of the initiatives that we've put in place, and it cuts across all the sectors of young people. Those that are not in school, those that finished grade 12, those that finished university, and others who probably have not gone to school but are interested in agriculture. And the successes has been there. Of course, we have our challenges. Maybe we'll discuss them later. But so far, we have seen some changes in terms of young people's perception towards all of these fields, and we've seen a lot. And additionally, we've also had exchange programs. Some of these young entrepreneurs do have the opportunity to go outside the Gambia. We recently have 4 of them that were taken to China for a study tour to understand how the Chinese economy and everything happens in that country and bring it back to the country and be able to serve as mentors to others. And the last part I want to talk about is the Youth Connect. There's a program called Youth Connect that was launched by Paul Kagame of Rwanda, and we have it in the Gambia. And every year we organize the Youth Connect Summit, and in each of those Youth Summit, we have young people that pitch business ideas. So every person, they apply, and those that are selected will come and do their pitching. And the 3 best business ideas are supported with cash amounts of money to go and implement the business idea that they have. So in summary, these are some of the initiatives that we're running in the country that we've seen have given dividend to young people and help change the economic situations of those beneficiaries. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I ask the next question, I would like to invite on the stage Ambassador Amina Mohammed. Please give her a round of applause. Thank you. Moving on to Lord Collins. Different regions have different successes and challenges. So could you please just share your success stories, highlighting the support in the UK for the youth empowerment, as well as the challenges that you're facing in promoting youth-driven economic growth?
Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. One of the things that struck me was that there are 1.2 billion young people in the Commonwealth. You are our biggest asset, but you're also the most important voice that governments need to hear. It's your voice that counts. And I just wanted to reflect. I was told earlier this morning that what you wanted to hear was about action, what we intended to do. One of the things I want to hear from you is what sort of activity you are going to undertake to ensure that we can deliver for those 1.2 billion people, the young people, the future of the Commonwealth. One of the things that struck me is that the new government in the United Kingdom is going to be a mission-based government focusing on the first priority is partnership for economic growth. It's through economic growth that we can deliver for future generations. And certainly as I've gone round the Commonwealth, one of the most things that I have noticed is that I see the future, and I see the future in this room. You are the digital innovators, you are the tech disruptors of tomorrow, and you are the future entrepreneurs. And it's how governments can give you the tools to deliver to achieve your dreams. And that's what the partnership of the United Kingdom's government intends to do. We want to ensure that you reach your full potential. And one of the areas that we want to do that is in 3 particular focused areas to improve the outcomes of young people. Education, ensuring everyone can access a quality education, and we will do this by supporting teacher training and embedding technology to improve learning. Second, skills. We will support training for young people so that they have the knowledge and skills to earn a living. Third, gender equality and inclusion. We will help strengthen women and girls' leadership skills and support boys underperforming in specific regions. The focus of this is to ensure that we build on those initiatives through the scholarships, and we'll be hearing about those shortly. But we offered thousands of scholarships last year to strengthen the offering of young people of the Commonwealth, ensuring that we can actually ensure the advantage of our Commonwealth to deliver for young people. So I want to leave as much time for you to ask questions and to give about your concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Professor Robin, there is an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go with someone. From an education and skills development perspective, how can international collaborations with the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission help equip young entrepreneurs with the skills needed for economic resilience?
Thank you for the question. I know that that quotation very well. It's something actually that I use very often at graduation ceremonies when I'm awarding degrees to students. Let me actually pick up from where one of the phrases that Lord Collins used as well, partnership for economic growth. I'd like to claim that collaboration is really at the heart of what we do, certainly in the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission. Really what we do is match candidates that come from nominating agencies all throughout the Commonwealth to UK universities. So we are the matchmaker. We help to broker that collaboration. We have over 45,000 applications each year, out of which we're only able to select 600 to 650 scholars. But our role at the heart of that is really to match outstanding talent throughout the Commonwealth with UK partners. Now, that's what we've been doing for 65 years. If we look forward and think about the scale of opportunity and challenge, there's an estimate that until up to 2030, we need an extra 600 million jobs created in the Commonwealth just because of the demographics. And actually, if we just look at existing companies, only a tiny fraction of those jobs will actually be created. So for real economic growth to happen throughout the Commonwealth, it really is going to be down to enabling young people to become entrepreneurs. And we see it very clearly in the, I don't read all 45,000 applications, but I read a very significant portion of them. And what comes through really loudly is so many of our scholars want to go on to be entrepreneurs when they return to their home countries, but lack the knowledge, the skills, and I think critically the networks because you can't become an entrepreneur in isolation. So I really feel that in order to address this gap between the number of jobs that are needed and the number of jobs that will actually be created, entrepreneurship driven by young people is going to be absolutely critical. And to create those entrepreneurs is going to require extensive and deep partnerships. And I'll say a little bit more about that in just a moment. One admittedly smaller scale initiative that we're running over the next 2 years to illustrate that is a Commonwealth Entrepreneurship Fellowship Program. This will take each year something like 25 or 30 fellows selected from around the Commonwealth to do an intensive entrepreneurship boot camp. Some of that will be delivered in the UK, but we will also be travelling around the Commonwealth to work on projects in different countries so that we're not just bringing people to the UK and saying, this is how entrepreneurship works here, but we're looking to embed entrepreneurship skills throughout the Commonwealth. A request from me, the call for that for this year's intake is just about to go out, so please watch out for that. If you're a corporate here, I know it's the Youth Forum and the Business Forum is running elsewhere, but you might have come in to find talent and find out about youth. If you're a corporate, please come and see me afterwards, because we would love to see whether any of your members of staff, because there's also the notion of intrapreneurship. Not all entrepreneurship is outside companies. Companies also need to have entrepreneurship within them. So please watch out for that. And that really is done in partnership. The Commonwealth Scholarship Commission, we can't deliver that ourselves, so we're partnering with various delivery partners, and we want to partner with corporates throughout the Commonwealth so that we can give this injection of entrepreneurship skills. And that leads me, I suppose, to my final point, to emphasize collaboration and the call for action that Lord Collins spoke about, which is that, in my view at least, there's really good examples of we might have a little bit of picking up outside frequencies by the sounds of things. There's really good examples of government-university collaboration, and there's really good examples of university and corporate collaboration, trying to connect that to form a really powerful triangle where you have government, universities, higher and learning institutions, and industry working together to address entrepreneurship, skills, knowledge, but also digital infrastructure and digital capability, I think will be absolutely crucial if we're going to seize this huge opportunity of demographic shifts in the Commonwealth, but gaps between jobs created and needed, and definitely gaps in access to digital infrastructure and skills.
Thank you. I've just been alerted that we're running out of time. I will start with you, Ambassador, and then I will go to you, Khosrow. Ambassador, most times as we have such conversations, we take normally an umbrella approach, and we assume that we're all faced with the same challenges. And then we tend to forget the marginalized communities as well as the underrepresented communities. What role do sports and enterprise play in promoting youth-driven economic resilience, particularly in the underrepresented or marginalized communities?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning. Oh, where's the energy? Good morning. I'm always excited to be among the youth because you energize, I think, all of us. And so can we have a much better response? Good morning. Good morning. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I am delighted to be here. I am the Secretary General's envoy for Sports Enterprise and Development. And we've had several conversations over the last year on how to use the power of sports to drive enterprise and development, and especially among the countries of the South, where this is much more, I think, needed. You've heard from colleagues, and I'd like to just say good morning to my colleagues as well, and to appreciate them. But you've heard from them. I think the challenges that face the youth from the South are just slightly different. From gender equity in sports to merchandising, to capacity building, skills development, to technology transfer and ICT training. But I want to begin by saying this, that in fact, I think we all know that you can leverage sports for sustainable development and for economic growth. And we all recognize the power of sports as an engine for growth. And when one looks at job creation, at tourism in our countries, as well as investment opportunities that are opening up in the sports sector, you actually realize that it's such a powerful engine for growth, apart from all the other benefits that we derive from sports. So we need to be smart about how we exploit this energy that is there, the opportunities that are there, for investment, and to just drive the SDGs, forward by engaging youth, by ensuring that we use that energy that I was talking about, the passion, the creativity, to drive sports, forward. But in order to do that, obviously, we need to make sure that youth have not just the capacity to use this opportunity, but also the resources that are required. Because without the resources, it doesn't matter actually how creative you are and how much, how many opportunities there are and how open the space is, you cannot use it, you cannot exploit it. And so it's really, really important that we drive investment towards sports merchandising, towards just ensuring that that sector, that space is fully developed. Let me also say this, that apart from the benefits that we derive from sports as a tool for economic development and growth, and I can give you several examples, but I won't go into that because of the time constraint. It's also a tool for social cohesion. And I come from a country and a region where sports is actually used directly to create cohesion. I've seen it, live as sports minister, when it didn't matter what kind of political issues we were facing at home. As soon as there was a sports event, and we had several over the last few years, whether it was an international marathon, whether it was a football game, whether it was a rugby match, whether it was cricket, any sports that was on. And so what we did was made sure that we had enough activities ongoing throughout the year to just ensure that that cohesion and that unity and that togetherness is actually, used and brought up. And that we spend much more time together than we spent away from each other, cheering teams, recognizing the power of sports, but also acknowledging and recognizing how much sacrifice and effort went into what these sportsmen and women did on a daily basis. So during that time, we actually organized the Gold League in Kenya, where several gold medals were broken, including by Kenyan sportsmen and women. And you won't believe how much cohesion that just created in the country. And it wasn't short-lived either. It was there for weeks on end, people just recalling how well our sportsmen and women did. That also happened during world events, world tournaments, the Olympics, where we actually managed to merge creativity and our heritage with the event that was taking place, and dressed our sportsmen and women according to our culture, but made sure that we injected a very sophisticated level of creativity that was actually brought to us directly by our young people, who said, look, this looks amazing. Can we try it? We tried it, resounding success. And from then on, we actually decided very deliberately and in a very focused way to ensure that those two aspects, our heritage, creativity, and sports, were brought together so that we could reap the benefits of the two at the same time. But let me also, thank you. But actually, in order to derive maximum benefits from sports, it has to be data-driven. It has to be data-driven. And therefore, there is an absolute need that we make sure that we integrate data into all the statistics that we put out there, whether it's actually statistics that relate to how sports contribute to our GDPs, right? How they contribute to wealth creation in our countries. We need all that data so that we can prove that sports is not just a social cohesion tool, but it's actually a powerful tool for economic development. But also that is the key component for achieving our SDGs. But in order for us to achieve this, obviously, the highlight has to be the role that the young people play, the role of the youth in doing all this, in ensuring that we are able to, first of all, generate the data that we require, right, in order to put our case across, but also in order to achieve everything, achieve the social cohesion, achieve the economic benefits of sports. The other thing that I'd like to put forward is the whole issue of if you want to derive maximum benefit, you must ensure that there is gender equity in sports. My surprise was that in all these years, there had never been any gathering where that issue was specifically discussed. And so, as Minister of Sports, what I did was I actually hosted a conference in Mombasa, a world conference on gender equity in sports. That actually it attracted the whole world because it was the first time that it was being held. And it was the reason why we held it in Kenya was because of the issues that we were facing. And I think that as young people, you know that we faced very, very many issues just in terms of gender equity and what was happening to our women's sports, our sportswomen, and especially our young sportswomen who were facing a lot of discrimination and who were getting extremely hurt in the process of exploiting this potential that they had. And most of the abuse was coming from their partners. And so it was really important that we brought everybody on board to discuss this extremely important issue. Because if we didn't, then even the benefits that we are sitting around the table talking about would be eroded. And since about 50% of those that participated at the Olympics in Tokyo were women, it just makes sense that we pay attention to our sports women and girls so that these benefits can be fully derived and so that we can achieve the goals and the objectives that we're setting for ourselves. And I think that we also need...
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I'm very, very interested, especially when it comes to women. But unfortunately, we're really running out of time. We just have one more panel member. And I'm cognizant that one of our panelists needs to leave shortly. So could we please just summarize, Khosrow? In terms of your journey in building grassroots movement in creative and digital initiatives, as well as how you think similar models can be replicated in other Commonwealth nations to foster the youth-led innovation.
Thank you for the awesome opportunity. Talofa, everyone. I see all the islanders are hungry. Okay, so on my part, I was going to share, but they've all shared my points. But for the area that I am specifically sharing on is usually storytelling. It's something where we lack in the communities, how to tell our stories, how to capture our stories. And for Samoa Grassroots Studio, it was a dream to try and capture our own story. And I grew up with neighbors who were American, so I was able to watch a lot of documentaries and movies like Lord of the Rings.
Sorry, Khosrow.
Yes.
Just to interject a bit, I've just been made aware that our UK minister needs to leave. So could we please excuse you? Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So everyone has a story to tell, but it's the way we capture it is something that I was really interested in. And when you have the vision to do something, it just remains a vision until you are given the opportunity to actually carry it out. And what I really want to emphasize this morning are 4 points. One is having the digital platform, and that is something that we already have. If you whip out your phone, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So the digital platforms have been set. 2 is our local narratives. We really have to focus on ourselves, focus on our community, look at our local communities and their stories, and think of ways to try and get it out there in a more creative and a storytelling way. And 3rd is something that we lack in the island is resources and materials. I can talk on and on about filming and that, but if I'm not given the tools to do it, I won't be able to be where I am and share the challenges that I've been facing. So it took me about 3 to 4 years to actually buy my own camera and basically sell my soul to buy the camera, the gears. So it really cost an arm and a leg to get into the industry of filming. But nowadays it's been much more, the old ways have been, we've moved on to new technology. You can basically film with your phone, Android and iPhone, I think. And I've seen people produce beautiful documentaries from their phones. And to me, that's the best way to get our stories out there. And the last one is something that some people are shy to do, is to collaborate. As mentioned before, collaboration is key to the success of Samoa Grassroots Studio. We've collaborated with local groups like the Brown Girl Wolf, Gasbone Audio, and many other umbrellas like the Nunuole Lofa. So this is an umbrella that all the people with disabilities fall under, and the projects that they run, we were happy to capture and share with the world that, Samoa is actually, I think we still live in huts and others, but we've developed ourselves throughout the years. And yes, we have cameras in Samoa, and yes, that we can edit. So if you go onto our page, we try to be different, to try and be recognized at a national level or international level. And some of the genres that we've produced, including music videos, we don't have the materials, and you can't rent gears and you can't rent uniforms or costumes in Samoa, so we make our own stuff. So I think we all have that innovation in us, but it's a matter of actually getting up and practicing rather than just talking about it and talking about ideas. The best thing to do is to put it into action. So again, take out your phone, search for Samoa Grassroots, and like, follow, and share. Thank you.
Thank you so much to my esteemed plenary. I greatly apologize. We do not have questions. We do not have time for questions. However, I will ask my esteemed guests to please interact with the young people, because I am aware that they'd really like to tap into your expertise. Just in closing, instead of a summary, could we please just have one word that speaks to this session, which is your message to the youth? Okay. Starting with you, Ambassador.
I think about 5 words. Yeah. Definitely promote innovation and investment in the sports industry. Collaboration, we can't stress that enough, including at the regional levels, at the local levels, and obviously leveraging the digital and the digital economy to make sure that the resources that are required for marketing of merchandise are completely reduced.
Thank you.
And I think the last word is that we must ensure that we support our young people in their entrepreneurship, especially in the sports and innovation space. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ms. Jessica?
Thank you. I think we're all going to fail on the one word. I have a couple of sentences myself.
Let's limit it to one sentence, maybe.
In the strategy that I talked about before, we were very deliberate in CARICOM to have 4 Ps instead of 3 Ps. So the first one is people and public-private partnerships. And it's important for us for that people aspect that whomever is the beneficiary, that we make sure that that person is at the table with us. But I think coupled with that is that there's responsibility on both sides. There are a number of places and spaces where we open the doors for youth, but they're not there at the table, or they're at the table and then the word does not go out to other youth. I think one of my adages for myself is that information wants to be free every minute of the day. And so if you come to a youth conference, etc., how do you build that information back into your own youth communities and the wider government and private sector communities? The last thing I think I want to say on entrepreneurship is that we do a lot of hackathons and lots of good things, but one of the biggest challenges I think and opportunities is for government to put itself out as the customer and therefore ask for the things that it needs from the youth in terms of applications development and everything else.
Thank you, Ms. Jessica. Thank you.
Thanks.
Honorable Minister. It's on.
Okay, so let's say this. Just say one. Say one. Believe in yourself. Now 2. Pursue your dream. 3. Be patient, and you will succeed. Talofa.
Thank you. Professor Robin?
Networking. I'm an academic, so I'm going to say that knowledge and skills are really important, but they gain power when you work through networks. So if you do nothing else today, make sure you meet as many people as possible and network.
Khosrow?
In Samoan, we have one word that I think would reflect today and the youth, and the word is whasinomanga, which is your identity. No matter how fast the world is going, remember who you are, where you come from. I would drop the mic, but I'd have to pay for it.
Thank you so much. So what I got from this is networking, we have collaboration, we have not losing your identity. Thank you so much for listening to us. I'd really encourage you to please engage with our plenary, our esteemed guests after. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, give a round of applause to our panel, please. An outstanding job for this panel. We are so grateful. Thank you, Mandisa. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you so many other members of the panel for doing an outstanding job. So we're moving from here. We're going to head directly into our refreshment break. And right after refreshment break, we're going to go into the breakout session. So the idea is that you will go to the refreshment area, grab something quickly, and head right to the breakout session. So what are we having in this breakout session? In room number 1, so this is room number 1 on this side, which is my right, your left, we are having the Commonwealth Trade Union Group. They're having a session on how to achieve resilient economies to benefit young people. In room number 2, that's UNICEF Pacific right here. They're having a conversation on a digital community for young people. Room 3, which is right behind room 2, also on your right, we have the Commonwealth Secretariat having a conversation on digital entrepreneurs. And the session is entitled Driving Change in the Commonwealth's Innovation Sector. And in room number 4, we have the Commonwealth Secretariat again having a conversation on Think Trade, Think Green, the Trade-a-thon. And so again, room number 1, we have how to achieve resilient economies to benefit young people. Room number 2, a digital community for young people. Room number 3, digital entrepreneurs driving change in the Commonwealth's innovation sector. And room 4, which is upstairs, Think Trade, Think Green, Trade-a-thon. So please, you may now get up. You can grab something to the tea area, some light refreshments, and head directly to your breakout session. Members of the task force, please help to mobilize persons to grab something quickly and head to the sessions. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Nache. So as you are moving to grab your refreshments and move straight into our breakout sessions, please be reminded some of the housekeeping rules. Don't remove the plugs for the cooler or the water refilling, please, because that's how it should be. Leave it there, please. Also, there's a liaison officer for transport. They're in the back. Please ask the